Hey everyone, it is Dave. Welcome in. It's time for another edition of Culling My Collection. I've got Bo right over here, and she is way asleep because it is just after midnight. It is June the 30th, 2026. And today I was thinking I want to do a book video tonight. Not really sure on the topic, but as I was going through some of the books in my closet, I uncovered some paperbacks. And I thought, what a great idea to talk about all of those. And so we're going to go ahead and go through them. I've got 15, and the bulk of them are horror related. So back in college, and I went to college kind of late. It was 2003, and I was taking a class called the horror novel. I loved my teacher. Jeffrey Cahan was his name, and he was the school's Shakespearean professor, and he also taught some other British literature courses, but he taught this class on the horror novel, and I absolutely loved it. It was one of those professors that really got you enthused about the subject and really got me back into reading, so I'm always very appreciative of him. Today he's still a college professor. Has written many books, and has also, I believe, works for the Ray Bradbury Studies. So he's just a phenomenal teacher. So shout out to him. And what we started doing is we read horror basically one week, and then we saw the movie that accompanied the book in the second week. And so we would alternate, and I think we covered about maybe 8 books and saw 8 movies over the course of the semester. We started off with Carmilla, which I don't have a copy of paperback, and it's not really big enough to be a paperback book. It is by Joseph Sheridan Le Fanu. It predates Dracula. It is a vampire story, but it's a female vampire story. So you see this made into a lot of horror, Hammer horror movies. And I'm just trying to think of maybe some of the titles. The Vampire Lovers would be one of them. And again, it's called Carmilla, and it's a phenomenal book. It's about 60 pages. So again, just kind of a novella rather than a book, kind of a long short story maybe. So let me take a look at the next one that we read was Frankenstein. I didn't like the book. I hate to say that. It is a truly Gothic novel, and I don't like the beginning chapter where they're running across the ice or anything like that. There is no Victor Frankenstein laboratory per se. There's no, mad scientist as much as we would normally associate this with Hollywood film, but it's a Gothic novel. And I wasn't a big fan of it when I first read it. It was a couple hundred pages in length. I'll give you the total here. Yeah, just 210 pages. But again, I was glad we kind of moved past this. The book that after Carmilla, that I fell in love with, because I love Carmilla, by the way. If you haven't read Carmilla, Joseph Sheridan Le Fanu, just a phenomenal book. I love Dracula. Dracula is a long novel. I mean, it's literally just under 400 pages. This paperback, 380. And it was just such a great story. And we looked at it in class with such depth to it. Talking about bloodlines, the fear of the other, things like that. And Dracula really, I think it was written originally in 1895, just is one of those books that is also not like, I shouldn't say paragraph driven. There's a special term because it's mainly documents and diary entries. So you can follow along with the novel, which takes place over a period of close to about a year. But a great story, and I absolutely love it. The next one in the timeline is The Island of Dr. Moreau by H.G. Wells. Are We Not Men? I remember that phrase from throughout the book. Basically, Dr. Moreau here is turning animals into humans and all of that, and it's just a wild science fiction fantasy horror novel. But it is a fairly quick read. It's probably 120, 130 pages. 144. Not too bad. But it is a very quick read, and H.G. Wells produces some pretty good books. I remember reading The Time Machine by him, but I do like The Island of Dr. Moreau. I think that is a great book. After that, we talked about what became my favorite author of the entire semester, a person I had never read before, H.P. Lovecraft. And we read The Case of Charles Dexter Ward, which is a great book. It is about bringing people back from the dead. And when I was looking for horror and mystery and this type of genre of a book, it always fell flat. I never liked the book. It was either too grotesque or too bloody or just too disturbing. It wasn't really creepy or interesting or somewhat believable. And I found H.P. Lovecraft in this class, and I've loved reading his books ever since. I've read his novels. I've read his short stories. I know way too much about him, and he is just a phenomenal author. Unfortunately, he died very, very young. And I remember, we had to read specific passages. I still have this one bookmarked. I don't know why, but I would always put in a paper clip, and I just found out why. So this is a great story where basically we brought someone back from the dead, and he is taking over this person's basically life. And so he's writing a letter to Dr. Willett, and he's trying to explain things. This is Charles Dexter Ward writing. And he says at the very end, in utmost gravity and desperation, he signs the letter with his name. And then he goes, P.S. Shoot Dr. Allen on sight and dissolve his body in acid. Don't burn it. And it was just such a great phrase. But when you read the story, you'll realize why that is the way it is. It is, and H.P. Lovecraft's books are fairly short. This is 124 pages, but it does take a little bit of time to read. H.P. Lovecraft tends to use words that are very, not difficult, but are very rare in our language. And so I remember a lot of times we were always looking up these words. In the class, we had to choose specific words that we didn't know really what they meant from the readings and share them with the group that we would get together and talk about the text and everything like that. It really is a great story. And allegedly, this is a rough draft, that he died relatively soon after he wrote this, and he didn't get a time to revise it at all. It was literally found in a drawer. So this is, besides The Call of Cthulhu, probably my very favorite H.P. Lovecraft story. And again, The Case of Charles Dexter Ward. One of the things that also turned me off about Lovecraft and why it took me so long to find him, being forced to read him in this class, is I didn't really care for generally the grotesqueness of the cover art of his paperbacks. So H.P. Lovecraft, one of the things he did was he was a prolific writer. And what ended up happening is he ended up having all these pen pals, people like Robert Howard, who went on to write Conan the Barbarian, and Robert Bloch, who, of course, is famous for Psycho, one of my favorite films of all time, and definitely one of my favorite books. So we went from H.P. Lovecraft to Robert Bloch and Psycho. There's nothing better than Psycho the book. It follows along basically word for word with Psycho the movie. However, the book has one extra chapter in front, and also like Marion Crane in the film is a different name here, and I can't remember. But it's same last name, but it's not Marion. That's not her first name in the book. Also, the description of Anthony Perkins' character, Norman Bates, is different. When you think of Anthony Perkins, he's this tall, good-looking guy. He's kind of young. In the book, the guy is middle-aged and a little paunchy and short and all of that. So those are some of the minor differences in the book. But for the most part, after the description of the Norman Bates character the first time, we really don't get any further description. So we kind of wash that from our memory and just always think about Anthony Perkins. The only thing better than Psycho is Psycho 2. Psycho 2 happens about 22, 23 years later from the original book and movie. And I will tell you, the movie in this case is completely different than the book. So if you like the horror slasher teenage type of, slasher film, Psycho 2 is perfect. The book, totally different. You must read this. It is even better than the original, which is really tough to do. But I remember I had just finished the semester and I was working a lot of hours. Man, I was working 60 hours a week. I had a really demanding sales rep job, and I had just finished this semester. I think I had taken like some ungodly amount of units, 16 or 18, and I just laid in bed the next day after the semester was over. I was exhausted, and I just kind of laid in bed and read Psycho 2. It was so good. This is one of the books we did not get to in that class. It was like the next one up. Also, what we didn't get to in the class, which I ended up reading later, was Clive Barker's Hellbound Heart. And of course, this is Hellraiser. A very, very good book, and something I would reread as well. But I did enjoy this. A very quick read. But I want to zip back to Robert Bloch, since I have him being talked about. American Gothic. American Gothic is a great, true horror story. This took place in the late 1890s, around 1893 at the Chicago World's Fair. It was the story of H.H. Holmes, who ended up befriending widows and people like that, taking advantage of them and then killing them. The horror house, which does not exist anymore, he would have people start to build it. He would not pay them. He would fire them. And so the next group of construction workers that would come on wouldn't know what the previous people did. And so all of a sudden we have secret rooms and passageways, things like that. And just horrible, horrible things happened. But American Gothic, great, great book. And if you've read, and I don't remember if I showcased it yet in this series, The Devil in the White City by Eric Larson, it is the same story as American Gothic. One more H.P. Lovecraft paperback. This is one that I picked up after the class was over, and I just wanted to read more H.P. Lovecraft. So, like this one here, we'll take a look at the table of contents. Here's a quote from H.P. Lovecraft. "The oldest and strongest emotion of mankind is fear, and the oldest and strongest kind of fear is fear of the unknown." So this has some stories such as The Shadow Out of Time, which is a great story, by the way. That's also like a short novella, about 60, 70 pages. We have The Shunned House, The Tomb, The Other Gods, The Doom That Came to Sarnath. One of the great stories, it's just kind of, it's so funny. It's like, you wonder what happens to Sarnath. Well, the doom is coming to Sarnath, that's for sure. Dream Quest of the Unknown Kadath, not one of my favorites. That's more of a science fiction story. There's some early tales, also some fragments in here as well. So I want to have, I have one more Robert Bloch. The Deadbeat. And this is about a musician, and he takes advantage of people. It's okay. Very, very rare, though. So, hardback copies are extremely expensive. Even the softback copies like this, they're just hard to come by. But luckily, I got a copy. Thank you, eBay. I'm going to share with you from one of my favorite movies, Murder by Death. I have the paperback for that. The great thing about the Murder by Death paperback is that there's about 3 or 4 extra scenes. One of them I remember primarily is Tutu Twain, the guy who is basically Truman Capote's character, is in a room that is filled basically with computers, and he is running them so that the rooms are moving around. So in the film, there's these scenes where you close the door and you open it up and it's another room. In this case, he's running them from a centralized computer center. Really fascinating. And again, a couple extra scenes in the book. Also very difficult to come by. However, I picked this up for $3.95. Once again, on eBay. And many years ago. So don't think I just checked it and just got it. Man, I probably had that book for about 20 years now. One of the newer books that I'm reading, and it's a series, is Doc Savage. And this is something I was turned on to maybe a few years ago. And I just haven't ever been able to find any of the books. Again, they're just kind of rare. I picked this up at the Bookman in Orange. Picked it up for $1.95 according to the back here. And it's just a wonderful book. It is now like, pulp paper. So it smells delicious. But this is, obviously rotting paper is what you're smelling. As far as the printing history goes, this is from the 1970s. This is a 5th printing, 1972. The story originally came out in the 1930s. This particular one, the Thousand-Headed Man, is from 1934. Also, one of the earlier paperbacks, or at least one of the earlier stories, is Dashiell Hammett's The Maltese Falcon. This came out of my dad's collection. He gave me a whole bunch of paperbacks years and years ago, probably in the 80s or early 90s, that he had. This one particularly, we'll see the printing on this is 1957. So this is a pretty old paperback. Smells not bad, but it's, not as rotting as the 1970s high acid paper is. But obviously, great film, great book as well. I have 3 more to go. One of them we'll get out of the way because I think it's funny. Everyone has a copy of Dianetics, and so do I. So this is the 50th anniversary edition, The Modern Science of Mental Health by L.Ron Hubbard. I always remember the commercials and everything like that, and I'm like, I gotta pick up a copy. And this is back in the very early 90s, and I've never read it. So it's here. Maybe I'll read it someday. I don't know. 2 other books that I've carried with me at least for 40 years. And these are one of those things that, I would never part with these just because they've been in my collection for so long. The first one is by Agatha Christie. I love reading plays. And so this is Agatha Christie's The Mousetrap and Other Plays. 8 great stage plays by the, master of suspense, Agatha Christie. So it's one of those books I haven't read all the way through or anything like that, but I have had this for so long. And if you look back at maybe, gosh, I wish I had old pictures of my book collection, this would have been in there. The final book is also kind of like not a book or a novel, but it is a list of movies on TV. And so this is going to, from 1984, this is going to tell you like how good or how bad. They're just movie reviews. And of course, let's take a look at one. What should we choose? Let's choose Murder by Death. So hold on here. Murder at the Mardi Gras, Murder at 45 RPM, Murder by Natural Causes, Murder by Decree, Murder by Death. 1976, 4 stars. Let me read it here. Alec Guinness, Peter Falk, Peter Sellers, Maggie Smith, Nancy Walker. Entertaining parody of murder mysteries by master comedy marksman Neil Simon. 5 of the world's most legendary detectives, modeled on Sam Spade, Miss Marple, etc., are invited to a weekend at an isolated country house to solve a murder at midnight. A triple reverse double whammy ending will leave you gasping. Director Roger Moore, 95 minutes in length. And so, again, you can see all as well how cracked the spine is. So I've gone through this. I've read a lot of it. It is such a great book. And again, it's just called Movies on TV. The stars, the stories, the ratings, movies on TV and cable TV. Conceived and edited by Stephen Scheuer. So that's my 15th book in the paperback series. I have a lot more paperbacks, so I'll cover them again in a later video. Bo is talking me into taking a nap, so I think that is exactly what I'm going to do. I do want to take a moment to thank everyone who has commented on my videos. People like Albert and Karen Banks and Nathan, Harry Scott. Thank you so much for taking the time to do that. And Chris W., I don't want to forget you either, but thank you for taking the time to like and subscribe and comment and everything like that. I will be back shortly to go over more books.